What's up guys, Sal here. So the Exynos vs Snapdragon issue pops up every year when Samsung releases its flagships. Samsung has again decided to use two different chipsets in its latest Galaxy S20 series. One is from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 865 in regions such as the United States, Canada and China, while the rest of the world uses chipsets made by Samsung themselves, the Exynos 990. And again, as usual, the Exynos is performing quite worse compared to its counterpart, the Snapdragon. We complained about this quite a few times in the past, and now there's a petition to stop the usage of Exynos chips in Galaxy devices. As you can see, it not only suggests Samsung to stop the Exynos chips, but also to use Sony's camera sensors instead of their own ISO sensors. Here's exactly what it reads. Outside of the US, Samsung sells phones that use their own branded Exynos SoC chips instead of using Qualcomm Snapdragon. Samsung also uses their own brand camera sensors, whereas in the US they use parts from specialist Sony. Based on experience and studies from numerous sources online, we believe Samsung's part to be inferior to their US counterpart. Phones with Exynos SoC chips shown to be perform slower, have less battery life, use inferior camera sensors and processing, overheat and throttle faster, among other issues. At the very least, we'd appreciate if Samsung were transparent about their inconsistencies. Alternatively, for Samsung to ensure we weren't paying the exact same price or even higher than our US friends. We'd have to accept this over many years over different iterations of the flagship phones. Every year we've hoped for Samsung to either give us the same device or make their own parts perform on par with the competition. They failed to deliver on these requests over and over again, and the performance gap only seems to widen over time. In the age of transparency, it's time for a change and for us consumers to have the right to choose what we spend our hard-earned money on. Samsung, please hear us. We love your devices and want to be treated fairly so that we can continue to enjoy them. Now, some of you may wonder why Samsung uses two chipsets. If the Exynos is worse than Snapdragon, then why use it in the first place? Well, while Samsung hasn't detailed why it uses both Qualcomm and its own Exynos designs in its phones, we can make a few guesses. Qualcomm has an effective monopoly on the CDMA standard, and for Samsung to offer its phones on Verizon, it needs to use a Snapdragon chipset. So why doesn't Samsung just use the Snapdragon 865 everywhere? Because Samsung stands to make more money in global markets by pushing its in-house solution instead of paying Qualcomm, so it uses Exynos chipsets in GSM-only markets. Same can also be said for the camera sensors. The performance disparity is indeed real. The Exynos performs around 20% worse than its Snapdragon counterpart every single year, to the point that it feels like these are two different devices. There is a generational gap between these two, so it only makes sense for them to now only offer the Snapdragon variant until they fix the Exynos processor. And thankfully, they are actually doing something about it. Samsung has partnered with AMD to bring their Radeon graphics to Exynos, which on paper means better graphics than the Mali GPU. It's also possible that the graphics could be even better than Qualcomm's Adreno, which of course time will tell. Also, Samsung has decided to scrap their custom Mongoose cores and will directly use ARM's architecture just like Qualcomm does for their Snapdragon chips, which means the Exynos should perform on par with the Snapdragon chipsets. So basically, Samsung looks set to make some major changes to its silicon making department. The Exynos chips are getting better, and if all goes as planned, it will perform on par with its Snapdragon counterpart. Now, reports say we'll be able to see this happen next year, possibly for the Galaxy S21, and fingers crossed that it actually happens and we don't have to sign a petition like this again next year. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and as always, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.